Talofa malo ilele, whakarofalahi atu, and welcome to assessment task tutorial number 3. What is today's topic, Grant Hocking?
Today's topic is Pacific principles and values. It's about working with people from Pacific backgrounds.
Great. So that's probably why I used my Pacific greetings. So very warm Pacific greetings to you. My name is Edward, as you all very well know, and of course Grant, and today we'll be taking you through the task tutorial for assessment task 3, working with Pacific people. So I guess one of the good things to know or to have, which you can download from our website, is the Career Force Guide for Pacific values and principles. So this will give you all the information that you need to complete the assessment task. This is, I think it's a really good read, and it puts a lot of things into context. So give us an introduction, different types of Pacific people, culturally safe principles, health of Pacific peoples, a bit of background there, the different types of Pacific models of well-being. So different Pacific values, which you may or may not be aware of. It's a good learning guide, isn't it?
It is a really good learning guide. Yeah, you will learn a lot about this. I think we'll have a look at the assessment task in a minute, but a lot of people who work in areas where they may not have a lot of contact with Pacific people, so especially rural areas in New Zealand, they do struggle a bit with this, because if you've never had any Pacific friends or never had any clients from Pacific countries, then it's sometimes a little difficult to know what the differences between Pacific culture and everyday New Zealand culture might be.
Right. So why is it important we do this assessment task?
It's really important for people to be able to work with Pacific people. They might have been born in a Pacific country, or they might have been born in New Zealand. But it's like working with any different cultural groups. There are norms and there are ways that you can behave which are entirely appropriate for that culture. And you can also offend people quite easily, and you might not know why. So it's learning about all of those things that relate to Pacific families, different nationalities from within the Pacific, and how you might successfully work with those people.
Right, and I guess it's really no surprise that, Pacific people have a high prevalence use of tobacco. So they're one of the priority populations, along with Māori, pregnant and mental health populations. So I guess, it's your duty as a good practitioner to be able to see anyone who comes through your door. So if you have a look, if you are in an area where there are lots of Pacific people, this is going to be good for you, it's going to be helpful. And if you're not, then actually you'll probably learn something. You absolutely will learn something.
Yeah. And it's also really good for people who are working in health in New Zealand who may not be from New Zealand. So they might have moved here from Australia, or they might have come from the UK and taken a job here. And so they've had no contact with Pacific people and no understanding of what Pacific values and principles may be.
Right. So the good thing about this Career Force Learning Guide is if you go through it and you have a quick read of it, then it's going to be a good guide for when you're answering the assessment tasks as part of the assessment, which we'll be completing for this assessment module. So in order to find that, we are going to, what are we going to do? We're going to go to our website, which is www.nts.org.nz. We'll click down the drop-down box to full program. You will find it's assessment task 3. So through there are the 3 links that you'll need to complete the task, which is the introduction, the Career Force Principles, Guides and Values, which we've just shown you, and this SSPP task tutorial is there. So if you haven't looked at that, or you should be looking, if you've clicked on that, you'll be watching us as we do this now. We're going to download the assessment task. It's coming as a Word document, and then we're going to open that up. And that's going to be what we'll be using today to complete the assessment task. There we go. So this is the task itself. It's pretty straightforward. So before it starts, as always, we want to read through the questions just to make sure that we know what we're in for. There's the learning guide there that you can click on if you haven't looked at it already.
And that introduction is quite important too, because a lot of people who complete this assessment task, when they're thinking about Pacific principles and values, they write Pacific people are similar to Maori. So what would you say to someone who said that about Pacific culture, Edward?
Well, you know what? I think that'd be correct in saying that Pacific people are similar to Maori, but in terms of answering the questions for this assessment task, you're going to need to elaborate on that. Whilst the Pacific and Māori have some similarities, there are some vast differences as well. So if you think of your own culture, if somebody came to talk to you and they were mistakenly giving you information that was for another culture, chances are you probably wouldn't have a good relationship with them. You wouldn't feel like there was a fair exchange of information. And you wouldn't be able to sort of take on board what they were saying, because actually they're working with you and they've got it all wrong. So I think put yourself in that position in terms of, how would you feel if they were working with you? When I work with people, I always work like it's my grandmother, just in terms of being able to explain in terms of the information that I'm giving. So, you're doing a little bit of homework, you're making sure that you have the right information to then go and do your work with. Okay, so that's not too difficult. Boxes will expand as you type, pretty straightforward. Name, email address, and the date you did this assessment. So actually there's only 7 questions, or there's only 6 questions as part of this assessment task. And the first one relates to, there's a tip right there. So if you're looking at this tip, it says before you get started, take some time to think about the difference between the policies you have and the procedures you have to follow. So this is in regards to your own workplace policies and the procedures in your workplace. Okay, so in this question, you have to give information about how your workplace has culturally safe principles, Pacific principles and values. So what might happen if the workplace does not have any Pacific principles or values in place, Grant?
Okay, yeah, that sometimes happens. So if your workplace doesn't have any policies that relate specifically to Pacific people, but you do have policies about how you relate to members of your community, you can describe what they are. So generally when we work with a community or with people from within that community, we treat them with respect, we do such and such and such and such. And when you talk about Pacific people, you can say, we don't have a policy that's specifically for Pacific clients, but if we did, I would work in this way.
Right.
So you could say what
like a hypothetical.
Like a hypothetical, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll quick that part A of that question is, how do the policies in your workplace offers relate to Pacific principles and values? So if you've got a document in there, you'll be able to complete this question based on your work document. And if you don't have a document, then how you would complete it if you did have a document.
Or it might be an opportunity to sit down with your manager at a staff meeting and say, look, we don't have a policy on how we approach Pacific people. We probably should think about drafting one.
Right. Okay. And then this is basically in terms of how the procedures of that your workplace offers related to Pacific people, same sort of thing. So if you have procedures, then actually you would just document those down there on how your workplace and how it relates to Pacific. And if it doesn't, then what sort of things would you like to see in the procedure? What sort of procedures do you think your organisation or how they would work to enhance the special support for Pacific cultural needs?
So what would be some examples of the process you would go through to support Pacific cultural needs?
Well, I guess for part of Pacific, relate to Pacific principles and values is that, we're Pacific people. So if I knew, if I was making my first call just to double check, and I saw that they had a name that might have been Pacific, I might probably do a little bit of homework to find out where they're from. I might actually even ask them when I'm on the phone, actually, whereabouts are you from?
Right.
And that
So
way,
what do you mean, whether they're Niuean or
yep,
Samoan?
absolutely, sort of, and that way then you've got a clear understanding of, and then based on that I'll be able to go and do some homework. I might learn their greeting, so if they were Samoan, I might next time when I see them, tāru whanava, or I could actually engage them in terms of saying, oh, okay, you're Samoan, how would I say hello in Samoan? And that way then you're building up rapport, and you're actually, so then that means that the next time you see them, you know that they're Samoan, and that you wouldn't probably open the conversation with, oh, Bula Vinaka, because, that's Bula Vinaka is for Fijians.
Right.
So in terms of sort of greeting someone appropriately and making them feel valued because you've done your homework, then they're the sorts of things you'd be looking at. If I went to their home, generally if you go to a Pacific person's home, at the front doorstep, you'll think a centipede lives there, because often all the shoes are outside. So, most Pacific people take their shoes off when they enter their home. So if I walked there and I saw those shoes at the door, I too probably remove my shoes as opposed to sort of walking in. So there are some, visual cues that will be able to help enhance your relationship with Pacific people.
Okay. So what would be some of the things that you could do wrong when you're entering or working with a Pacific family that may cause offence?
Sure. Okay. Then so. You need to dress appropriately. Most of us, thank goodness, we dress appropriately. We dress in sort of casual, smart casual business when we're going to visit people. So you want to make sure that, you're dressed appropriately, that, you're covered adequately. So, you're not going to be dressed like you're going to the beach with a pair of shorts on and a tank top, which is highly appropriate if it's summer and you're in your leisure time and you're going to the beach. But if you're going to someone's home, chances are that's probably not a good look, regardless of if it's hot outside or not. So, you would dress appropriately. Most Pacific people are affiliated with the church, so therefore, you may want to offer a karakia, or if they'd like to start our session with a blessing. So you probably wouldn't go in there gung-ho and sort of, not that we swear a lot, but, some people, if you're sort of, your language needs to be respectful. There might be more than one person in the room. So actually when you get to a Pacific, there could be a whole lot of, the members of their whānau or their ainga could be there. So actually you would need to include them in the support and care of the treatment plan. So you wouldn't get in there and see all these people and go, oh, all you people need to go out of the room. I'm here to see Grant and Grant alone. Because
it's confidential.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But actually we work as a collective, and if you want actually everyone in the home to contribute to the support of that person who's stopping smoking.
Okay. So a lot of it is knowing and having a little bit of understanding about some Pacific culture, but also about common sense, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So really it's just about, taking 5 or 10 minutes just to familiarise yourself with, what's going on for that different Pacific person. And it's not difficult to find, because actually if you're having a look at the learning guide for Career Force, it's got it all in there. So this, question 2, write a few sentences, describe how you personally apply culturally safe Pacific principles and values when you're working with your clients. Tell us what you do.
Okay, so would you have to be aware that if you're working with a Tongan family, that's a little bit different from working with a Samoan family?
Well, yeah, that's really important, because actually all the different people from Pacific nations all have different languages, a different way of doing anything. So just because we're all brown doesn't mean that we all are all the same, because I guess it's like putting an Englishman, a Frenchman and a Dutchman all together. Yes, they're all white, but actually they all speak different languages and they'll have a completely different cultural background.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So, whilst if there's anything that you don't understand or you don't know, then actually all you need to do is ask. I guess the worst thing to do is to think everyone is the same and then go in there with the attitude, oh, they're this, the Tongans are the same as the Samoans, because actually they're not. But if you ask, more than likely that person will respond and give you the answers that you're after.
Okay. Yep. Great.
So, so in that, to a few sentences to describe how I personally apply culturally safe Pacific values and practice? Well, as I said, I would take off my shoes when I went to the door. I would ask them if they wanted to start with the karakia, if there was anyone else in the home, whether or not they'd like to sit in, with the conversation that we're having, so that we could get them to support what we're doing. I'd ask, I'd speak slowly and clearly. I would also ask them to repeat back what I said, just to make sure that you understand, that they understand what you're saying. Okay, because often people can be quite polite. They can sit there and nod, and they can sit there and nod and think, oh, and you think that they're understanding you, but actually, you need to go over it again. That's why it's good, especially if you're working with older people whose English is a second language. Having younger people or members of the whānau in the room is great, because they often make correct translators. So they're the sorts of things that we'd be looking for.
Okay. I know some people, when they work in, some health workers, when they work in Pacific people's houses, they get offered gifts by the people when they're leaving, and they can't accept them because of company rules. Is that offensive?
Well, so I guess with anything, as long as you answer from the heart and explain that our policy doesn't allow us to take this, but thank you so much for the offer. We acknowledge it, but I won't be able to take it. Often they might ask if you want a cup of tea or something to eat. So instead of sort of saying, oh, I've just had some lunch, sometimes I'm just sort of saying, well, look, actually, I just had lunch, but I'll take a cup of tea and maybe just one of those biscuits. And I might not even actually eat it. It might just sit there, but the gesture has been made. The offer of acceptance has been made in terms of saying, yes, thank you, I'll have a cup of tea. And even if I don't want the cup of tea and it just sits there and I don't touch it, they've taken the time to, it's part of the welcome process. And as them being the host, how they feel that their hostly duties are being sort of met. So, you wouldn't just say, no, thank you, I've just eaten. I might just say, well, actually, I've had something to eat, but I'll have a small thing of that. I'll have a cup of tea, and then it might just sit there for the duration of our conversation.
And there's a lot of, Pākehā like myself, or Palangi, there's a lot of Samoan and Tongan names that are really hard for us to pronounce without a lot of practice. Can that cause offence?
You know what? In my experience, all you've got to do is ask them, how do I pronounce your name? Look, I saw your name. I know it's written down here. I just want to double check that I'm getting it right. And then often they're just broken down into syllables. So, once they've taught you how to say their name and you break it down phonetically and into syllables, it's not too difficult. But of course, like anything, if you're unsure, it's best to just sort of, ask. It's not too difficult.
Good advice.
Yeah. Yep. What you don't want to do is just, try to think you're saying it correctly, and then every time you see that person, call them by the wrong name.
Or call them mate.
Or incorrectly. Well, yes, exactly. See, so this is, question 3. Think about clients that you've had from at least one Pacific nation. Write a few different sentences to describe this culturally safe Pacific principle of value that this group needs. Okay, so this is only looking for one. So like, for example, so, if I was going to see someone that was Fijian, then, I would greet them with, oh, bula manaka, because, I know that is the Fijian greeting. I'd maybe talk about something that interests them. So, we all know that Fijians are fantastic at the Rugby World Sevens. So maybe, do they know any Sevens players? What sort of, are they interested in following it? Because actually then that's when you're sort of creating a relationship. I might ask them a little bit about where they're from on the island, maybe the differences between the islands in Fiji, the difference, how long they've been here. Because all of those sort of questions are showing that you are interested in them and you're getting some information out of them and you're creating and you're building that good rapport.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So, and once again on this question, it goes on to say, if you have not had clients in the Pacific area, please answer the question about what you would do. So you would, if you've never had a Tongan or Samoan or Fijian client, for example, you can say, I have not had a client, but if I was to meet a Samoan client to help them stop smoking, this is what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and some of this, so you may work or you might go to church with somebody that is from a Pacific nation, and you could have a quick chat to them in terms of, okay, so actually a friend of mine is Samoan, and just ask them a few things about what the sorts of things that they should and shouldn't be doing. Chances are they'll be more than willing to help you and share some of that information with you. Question 4, describe briefly what you would say to do to support clients from Pacific Nation. So this is with regards to different ethnicity, to show that you respect their values and culture. Well, this is, what would you say in terms of your verbal communication? Same sort of thing, really. So if I was going to see a Tongan, I would use a Tongan greeting. I would find out what the Tongan greeting was. I would ask them, what's a nice Tongan greeting that I could say when I come to see you? I'll certainly tell you, my lawyer today. That way there, you actually know you're going to be getting it right because you're actually seeking their advice. I would speak slowly and clearly. I wouldn't be using great big words. I wouldn't use a lot of acronyms. I wouldn't use
NRP and DHB.
Yeah, so you've got to keep it simple. And then I would also engage them by getting them to repeat it. I'm just double checking, did you understand what I said? Do you have any questions? So that way then you're reinforcing the message that actually you're listening to them, and that if they've got any problems or questions, to let us know.
It's interesting here about body language, because body language is such a vital part of communication. We're showing people that we're relaxed, that we're friendly, that we're open. It's all communicated through our body language. But body language can also cause a bit of offence if you get it wrong, like touching, touching someone who doesn't like to be touched, for instance. Touching people on the head, and their head is seen as tapu. So all common parts of body language, I guess. So what would be something around body language that you probably wouldn't do when you're with Pacific clients?
Oh, well, I guess, you would... you want to be relaxed, open and friendly. So I wouldn't sit there with my arms closed and sort of, far away on the other side of the room from them. You would sort of be open so that they could see you, so that actually, you can make that connection when you're sort of chatting to them. So just in terms of sort of ensuring that there's a respectful distance between you, and that you're... so you wouldn't want to be sitting there like with everything kind of hanging out. It's all about, being respectful with the people that you're with. In terms of, a polite handshake, that's always worked well. If you're in doubt of what, I normally kiss people when I see them, but generally I'll sort of, put my hand out first and then sort of see, and I let them take the lead.
And what about when a lot of Pacific people like to have discussions sitting on the floor? So that's sort of body language, isn't it? Would you pull up a chair?
Yeah, so I guess, you've got to take the lead and you have to mirror the actions of the people that are in the room around you. So I know with Pacific, in formal settings, they do tend to sit on the floor. Chances are if you're going to their home and it's not a formal setting because you're having a conversation, they'll be sitting on a chair. If you were going into a formal setting and they were all sitting on the floor, then perhaps you would do that too. But in this day and age, probably not so much. So, just mirror what's happening in the room when you get there. So, just in terms of that, there we go. How do you behave to support Pacific clients' needs? Well, actually, it would be the same as you would behave with any other group population that you're working with. You'd be respectful. You'd want to get them to contribute to their plan. You'd want to hear what they have to think. If they've tried stopping smoking before, then they'll have some ideas about, what went wrong for them. How could they then change their behaviours at this time it might work for them. So part of it, that is just in and around, like you would work with anyone, you want them to be part of the self-determination of their care moving forward. For question number 5, we'll be looking at our workplace health and safety or health and strategy document. So, if you've got a document, great. You want to write a few sentences to describe culturally safe principles for Pacific and values that you're addressing in your workplace. If you don't have that document, it tells you right there, talk about what your strategy document should have in it in relation to Pacific people. So that's probably just, in and around the things that we were talking about before, about being respectful, taking some time to get to know different Pacific islands and the languages so that when you're going to see somebody, that you're addressing them correctly. that if there are other members in the home and they want them to be part of the discussion, absolutely invite them in, let them be part of it. Don't, feel, yeah. So it's about being inclusive, really.
And it's also important to remember that Pacific people who smoke are one of our priority populations. So
Absolutely.
they require more care and more attention than maybe some other ethnic groups in the community.
And also, I guess you're really comfortable with working with the people who are most like you. So in terms of, making sure that these Pacific people get the same care and treatment generally, you've got nothing to be nervous about. I always think, when I'm working with people that I don't know or that I'm not familiar with their process or their etiquette, I just ask. And I find for me, that works best. People are really happy to give you the information if you just ask them flat out, And it's like, well, actually, Brad, what's the best way for me to register? How do I say your name? I just want to make sure I get it right. People are more than happy to do that as opposed to me just, be sitting here saying your name incorrectly every time I see you. Then number 6, discuss the importance of plots on the family by kinship from those by Pacific nations. Well, actually, Pacific people, are not too dissimilar to Maori in that respect, that we are a collective people, that we do things collectively for one's self-enhancement, but also for the family and wider community enhancement. So that's really why when you see Pacific people, they're often together because they do things together as a family, as a community, because they're either sharing the load or, it's like many hands make light work. So if everyone's if you've got one person there, they're all moving towards that goal of enhancement for your community. So it's really important that fits in terms of kinship, because we get strength from those that we care about, and actually you're stronger as a collective than you are as an individual. And then finally, you've just got to discuss this assessment with your manager. So, they'll be verifying your work and whether or not that's how, whether your work policy and procedures reflect what you've written in your assessment task, and that, whether or not they'll be able to verify that you are actually culturally sensitive or that that's what you follow when you're working with Pacific people.
Excellent.
So I guess then we've just come down to the end where you'll save your task and you will email it through to nts@inspiring.org.nz. And I guess in terms of, if you get stuck at any part of this assessment task, then you can access Grant or myself via our NTS website. Our contacts are on there, or you can give us a call here at the office. It's not too difficult to get hold of us if you need us.
Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that was valuable, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, whakatete le lava. If you get stuck with anything, that means thank you very much. If you get stuck with anything, get hold of us. Ia manuia lava le aso, which means enjoy the rest of your day. Tō pāsui fua.